We're in our fourth week on this book, The Power of Giving, and the chapter we're looking at today is giving up. So we're going to talk about giving up in just a moment, but I first want to talk about some of the traditions at our center around about the end of the year, like right now. On Wednesday morning at 4 a.m., that's noon Greenwich time, we're going to be gathering. Now, this event that we participate in started in 1986 on December 31st, when people all around the world gathered in thought, in consciousness. They came together wherever they were to participate in, a planetary affirmation. That's really what it was. An affirmation of peace and goodwill and love and forgiveness and understanding. It was originally called, it was called a number of different things. It's been known as the World Healing Day, the World Instant of Cooperation, the World Peace Meditation, that's what we call it. And it was intended to be a moment of oneness, to dissolve the sense of separation that seems to it plagues us in this human experience. It was originally started by the Quartus Foundation in 1986. They called it the Planetary Commission. I like that. And they set it up to be worldwide, to be non-denominational, really trans-denominational, and non-political as a movement, which seems so appropriate for our world today, so needed. And their purpose was to unite people in a common bond that transcends differences, to allow us to be together in love and to bring balance to our human experience on this beautiful planet that is our home. And when it started, word spread very, very quickly for that first December 31st, 1986, because I think people felt a need, a calling to be able to contribute something to the world at that time, especially in a spiritual way, very much like we feel today. There's something we can do to contribute to a world in which peace prevails. And some estimate on that first December 31st that more than 500 million people participated in the event, representing all sorts of faiths and different nationalities. Some say more than 70 countries. It's also believed that every single state in the United States had a community gather in to participate. Now, since then, and since the initial commitment of so many years to do the meditation, many communities like ours have carried on with the tradition. And so we gather at noon Greenwich time, which for us, lucky us, means 4 a.m. And you're invited to come and participate and to bring a blanket or come in your pajamas and sit together in a beautiful environment with beautiful lighting and the quietness that is so beautifully present at 4 a.m. in the morning, to try and imagine peace, what our planet would look like and feel like and be like if harmony prevailed. And that meditation experience at 4 a.m. on Wednesday morning, you see, I keep on saying Wednesday morning because sometimes people confuse it and they show up on Thursday morning, on the 1st of January, and then peace is already finished. So it's Wednesday morning, the last day of the year, and that meditation, it launches a 12-hour observation period, which we call our New Year's Eve vigil. I love that word, vigil. A time to keep watch. And it's an opportunity for us to then personalize this meditation from planetary peace to personal peace. It's a 12-hour period of observing, asking the question of yourself, how do I want my life to look, say, this time next year? And it's a wonderful opportunity to carve out space to do that, to really take some time to ask yourself the question. And you can drop in at any time during that day. You can make a whole day out of it, or you can come and go as you please. It's an opportunity to take the peace idea further into your life. How do I want my life to look in a year's time? Then I can use my imagination. So, then what do I need to be doing this time next year in order for that to be a reality? What do I need to be doing in 6 months from now in order for that to be a reality? What do I need to be doing next week in order for that to be a reality? Now, the book of the month, the authors take it a step further. And they say instead of taking on something else to do, another something to struggle with, as in how New Year's resolutions can be sometimes, they say instead, why not consider giving up something? Letting go of something as a way of creating movement and space for health and prosperity and harmony in your life to flow. And that changes the question slightly. How do I want my life to look in a year from now? Well, then what do I need to give up for this to come into being? In other words, what is occupying the space where that something wishes to express? They say in the book, do you want to find more meaning and fulfillment and abundance in your life? If so, consider giving, and also consider giving up. Their idea is that sometimes our lives become clogged up with non-essential items or activities that act like a drain on us, stealing our resources, and we're not aware of them because we've long since stopped thinking about them. I don't know about you, but I get a notice from the utilities company that rates how well I'm doing with my energy use in comparison to other homes in the area. So a couple of years ago, I was alarmed because mine was way off the chart above everyone else. I thought, how could it be? It's just me and a cat. What's going on? So I started looking around for where areas where energy was being seeped, drained away. I started to notice things, the convenience of leaving appliances on, monitors on, extra this and that on. And, I adjusted them, but it wasn't enough to bring the balance down because I was missing something really obvious that had been there for a very, very long time and that I kind of liked. And it was that I had in the bathroom floor under the tiles was a heating pad. And I had just left it on all the time. See, it kind of snuck under the radar. It was there. And when I finally identified it, what was going on, I had an immediate adjustment in the available resources because I didn't have to pay for those huge bills anymore. It also opened my awareness to how much noise all of the other electrical appliances were making. So as soon as I started to give up the sense of always had to be on, always had to be warm, I started to experience this feeling of freedom. And that's the idea. What is it that has moved into your life and you've forgotten that it's draining your resources? And then moving that out, moving that on is the way to help create the space for newness to be in your life. Now, the authors of the book, The Power of Giving, they created a bunch of lists for us to consider. They're very careful to say that these lists are not comprehensive lists, and nothing in the list is intended to be portrayed as bad or not good for you. They're just ideas to think about. So as you read the list, you consider, are there any items on this list that I might want to give up? Can I imagine feeling better if I did give them up? Because if you can imagine that, you're onto something. So I'm going to read the list with you, and you're invited to notice, pick 3 or 4 items. Look for the ones you typically overindulge in. Examine your relationship with them. Some of them might represent a drain on your resources. One way to find that out is ask yourself as you examine the items, does this contribute joy or stress to my life or to the life of people around me? Because there might be a candidate for giving it up. And the book has an amazing suggestion that says, which of the items on the list would your friends think you have a problem with? I'll tell you a little story. About 25 years ago, I studied to be a licensed spiritual coach. We call them prayer practitioners. It's a terrific training, really wonderful. And so these prayer practitioners can be hired on a fee-for-service basis, and their work is to help individuals work through blocks, to help identify and work through them. So we are trained to listen for what is going on in the client as the client speaks. We're trained to listen in between the words, right? To listen for what isn't being said. We're trained to identify what's hidden and yet still affecting the client. It's wonderful. And our prayer practitioners, their cards are on the wall next to the bookstore. And if you've never tried one, it's a wonderful gift to give yourself, especially at this beginning of a new year. Anyway, the point is that I became very good at doing the work because the training was so excellent. We were really taught how to listen to people and spot their blocks. And yet in all of the time I was becoming an expert on other people's issues, I didn't seem to get any better at spotting my own. You too, Effie? Isn't that amazing? Have you noticed that it's easier to spot other people's problems than it is to spot our own? Sometimes I need help. Or another way of saying the same thing. Have you ever pretended that the problem you have doesn't exist? Except that everyone else knows. We call that a hidden belief. And even though it's hidden in plain view, it continues to work its magic, affecting you. And sometimes it's hidden because you just won't see it. You know, maybe it's too painful. Or maybe it's like that heating pad in the floor. It's been there so long you've forgotten about it. Or maybe there's a payoff for letting it drain your energy that you don't wish to go without. And if there is such a thing going on, it can make planning and progress very frustrating. Because no matter how many New Year's resolutions you make, if you do not address it at the level of the hidden belief, you can't make any progress. All right, another way of saying the same thing. Okay, you make this New Year's resolution. You have this resolution that you're going to go to the state of Nevada. But you refuse to notice or admit that you are actually standing in the state of California. Instead, you act as if you're in the state of Hawaii. In fact, you talk as if you're in the state of Hawaii, and you tell everyone that you are in the state of Hawaii, although everybody knows you're clearly in California. As a result, your plans can never materialize. You can't even book a flight. Nobody understands what you're talking about, and so you keep on waiting for a lucky break. You keep on waiting for the stars to align, or for an affirmation to be demonstrated, or for things to get better, and yet none of these seem to actually help. It's not because they are defective, but sometimes it's because you're starting from the wrong state of mind. And you might have to give up something in order to allow movement to happen. Give up what? Well, that's what these lists are about. So now we can get back to the lists. I had to build up to the lists. Okay, keep in mind, would your friends or acquaintances think you have a problem with any of these items on the list? Now, do choose wisely who you will ask. you know. You know what I'm talking about. Sloth. Oh, love that word. Laziness, envy, anger, avarice, getting, hoarding, greed, just the opposite of sharing, gossip, hatred, fear, prejudice, judgment, procrastination, littering. And the idea is it's not a complete list. You've got to decide what's on your list. I mean, your item may not be up there. I started thinking about what things I, should put on that list, that my friends' lists. What they have a problem with. Magical thinking. We're prone to that. Rudeness, avoidance, denial, being inconsiderate, hot-headedness, selfishness. What is on your list? And I think it is important not to move into beating ourselves up for it. We're just beginning to notice. Because once we notice the things that are candidates for being given up, now we can begin to use our imagination and imagine. Imagine a world in which I have given it up. Who would I be? How would I be? Who would be around me? How would I be talking? How would I feel? They also make a list of actions that are wonderful to consider, because we get to ask ourselves the question, how much time do I spend on the following? In other words, where am I investing the best part of my time? And if you noticed a couple of things, 2 or 3, then you can do the same thing. Imagine a world in which you have given up or reduced TV, texting, smoking, gambling, drinking. Smoking's on there twice. It's a message for somebody. I don't know. Shopping, unhealthy food consumption, mindlessly littering, lying, deceiving to self, to others, cheating. I don't know what's on your list. The idea is just to make a list of your own. See if you can discover where is there room for a little giving up. What needs to be added there? I know what needs to be on my friends' list. Overspending, non-saving, head in the ground activity. It's my friends. See, the authors seem to think that there can be activities and ideas in our lives that dampen our ability to be good givers and receivers because they take up so much time and so much resource. They have the full focus of our mentality. It reminds me of something that I learned at the Center for Spiritual Living. It's part of the teaching that is in our courses that we teach. It's a teaching about how to think when you've discovered a block like this. How shall I think when I've discovered something that is causing me to be stuck? Because sometimes when you discover it, you become obsessed with it. So it's in The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes on page 164, and it says, in our affirmative prayer, an affirmative prayer is a kind of oneness meditation, a kind of wholeness meditation, like we're going to be doing on Wednesday morning. It says, in our affirmative prayer, we are to turn entirely away from the condition that we've discovered, because as long as we look at it, we cannot overcome it. By thinking upon a condition, we tend to animate it with the life of our thought, and thereby it is perpetuated and magnified. So when we're in prayer, that's not the time to obsess about it. And sometimes it's just little annoying things that catch my attention and steal all my resources. It can be just something that somebody said. And then in my mind, I stare at it. And I give it life. I bring it to life, just like Frankenstein's monster, until it is big and dangerous. And sometimes it's a little more sneaky than that. Sometimes it's a habit. It's just a habit that I've, over time, given more resource to and more energy to. And it's something that I have allowed to become an obstacle to my spiritual life, and it's moved in, and it's draining the electricity. And on that same page, 164, it says, in my affirmative prayer, which is a kind of wholeness meditation, I am to turn away from focusing on the condition I've identified and give it up for a moment and imagine a world in which I am free from it. How would I feel? And I say imagine because sometimes we haven't met ourselves in that released state yet. We don't yet know what it's like. We have to make it up a little until we stand it. It's new territory. The next paragraph says affirmative prayer is not willing things to happen. It is to provide within ourselves an avenue through which they may happen. Affirmative prayer opens up the avenues of thought and lets reality through. It removes obstructions of thought and lets in the light. It removes doubt and fear in the realization of the presence of Spirit. And it is necessary while we are confronted with obstructions. And that's the sentence I love. You know, when you find an obstruction, that's when spiritual affirmative prayer becomes so necessary and so helpful, very useful, because it creates a pathway through which peace, cooperation, wholeness can express through us. It is my sincere hope that you will take advantage of our annual traditions, the World Peace Meditation on Wednesday morning at 4 a.m., for planetary reasons as well as personal reasons, and follow it up in that 12-hour period afterwards, whether that's here with us or at home, so that you can begin to open up in you avenues in thought that will let the reality of wholeness in and will flood your understanding with the light of hope and courage and optimism, which I believe are already always present in you. And that would be my hope and wish for you this new year and forever. I invite you to breathe in with me, and exhaling, let your eyes close. And beginning to use your imagination with me. Take a moment to imagine your own life, say next year sometime, in which you have given up whatever obstacle you have identified, or maybe you haven't yet identified what it is, you just have a sense there is room for giving up. Without trying to figure out how this will happen, you simply let your mind be creative. Who would I be? Free. What would the gift be that I would have to give more freely to this world? If I were to truly cherish myself, what would I bring forward? And we can apply that same vision to our world. without trying to figure it out. What would my planet be? What would it be like if it was truly free from the blocks I've identified? And if I'm not sure what they are, I can just imagine a world in which peace prevails, understanding connects, and love unites. It is our conviction that using our minds this way creatively is our personal use of the creative law of spirit. So we take to heart that these moments of meditation, our prayerful consideration, are a creative force in the universe, that we are setting something in motion together, which is why we turn away from the conditions and for a moment in prayerful contemplation, we think exactly and only upon that which we wish to be in this world.